Hola, you are listening to First Gen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. My name is Priscila Luna. I am your host, and I'm so excited to present to you guys today's guest, Carla. And I definitely want to give you a moment to introduce yourself, Carla. So let us into your world just a little bit.
Sure, and thank you, Priscilla, for having me. So my name is Carla Avalos. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the state of California, live in Los Angeles, born and raised here. I'm first gen, so my parents are originally from El Salvador, and I've been there a few times. But yeah, I've been in this field for like a long time. So, got my bachelor's in social work in 2005, master's in social work in 2008 from USC, and I became a licensed clinical social worker in 2012. So in addition to my, part-time private practice, I also have a primary job, which is working for the government, for the local government, where I'm a supervisor and I supervise, social workers, and psychologists. I'm a busy lady, so I play like multiple roles in my life. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And you're on social media and
Yeah.
you're on podcast. Wow.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
My goodness. Okay. So you've been in the field for some time. Well, we'll start maybe back in your first gen experience growing up. So did you grow up in Southern California?
Yes, I did. So like I mentioned, born and raised in Los Angeles, and I know Los Angeles is obviously like a big area. So specifically, I grew up in the neighborhood called the Pico Union area. So that's where a lot of like Central Americans tend to like live or just like hang out from like my understanding. So I lived in the Pico Union area from like birth to I would say maybe 9 years old, and then we moved. Me and my mom moved to Hollywood, and I've been in Hollywood ever since. So yeah.
Oh, okay. In Hollywood. And then do you have any or did you have any siblings growing up?
I did not. So something that's, I guess, I would say maybe unique about me is I'm an only child, which you don't tend to find a lot, right? In the
Yeah.
Latinx community. So it's just always been me and my mom. So just a little bit of a backstory. My dad is involved in my life, but I think just doing a lot of reflection on like my own healing work and looking at like my family dynamics. I think because my mom also has a father wound. When she met my dad, like, she didn't foresee it as like a long-term like relationship, because I think for her, like being in a
Oh,
long-term relationship wasn't something that she felt was for her, given like her own relationship trauma and also like childhood trauma. So she just felt that when she got pregnant with me, she was just going to do it all by herself. Obviously, she did have support from extended family members, and some friends, but I think from the get-go, she was just like, I'm going to do this on my own. So I'm a strong, independent woman, which she totally is. So it's always just been me and my mom, and I do consider her being one of like my best friends, just because we're like super close. And again, also because I'm an only child, so it also helped us have like a strong bond. So yeah.
yeah. Was it like that growing up, or did it take some time for it? Because I imagine there's a lot of pressure on you growing up.
Yes, actually, like not like too much pressure to the point where like I was stressed out, but like I would say that I felt like I had to give back for what she did, right? And I think a lot of first
Mm.
gens kind of like feel that way, like, she made the sacrifice of coming to this country like all by herself. So the one way that I could repay her is to make sure that I have a good education and a good career. So yeah, and I think also just like for me, I just remember her telling me, like, even since I was like a little girl, just always like motivating me like to do whatever like my heart decided. Like she never had a specific
Oh,
goal or dream like for me like to have, but she just said, like, whatever you decide to do, like I'm here for you, but but just make sure that I want you to have like a good education and a good career. But she always has always been like one of like my biggest cheerleaders. So I think that helped me gain some confidence in to do what I do. Not to say that I didn't suffer from imposter syndrome, because I definitely did. But I just feel like knowing that she was on my side and being my cheerleader, like I knew that I could achieve like my goals. So So yeah, I think like for me, I definitely worked hard to make sure I had good grades. And actually, like looking back now, I would say out of my close friends from high school, I think I was the only one who went directly like to university, like right out of high school. Everyone else, chose different paths, which is fine. But I also remember just struggling with navigating with that because none of my close friends went directly to university. So I had to embrace that journey kind of on my own. I mean, I did make friends while I was in university, but I just remember just being like, wow, this is uncharted territory. Like, how do I navigate this?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ooh, well, that's beautiful to hear that you felt supported growing up, and that like you kind of had that support from your mom. One, to do whatever your heart desired. That's so beautiful.
Yes, yes, I'm really grateful for her. I mean, she's still like obviously like my biggest cheerleader, like to this day. But yeah, granted, like like navigating like the uncharted, like first gen experience, like she didn't know too much of how she supported me, but she would always there supporting me at least like emotionally and financially, like especially because college is super expensive, so I appreciate her for
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And then did you have like a big family out here?
It was just really just me and her. Like I mentioned, we do have extended family, and what I mean by that is that she has cousins like from her maternal side of the family that live out here in LA. She does have two siblings that live not in LA, but I have an uncle that lives in Canada, and then another one that lives like in the East Coast. But yeah, it was really just me and her just navigating the intricacies of being in LA and just, navigating the
Mhm.
everyday to day life. So yeah, it was just really just me and her just doing it all
Wow.
together. Yeah.
So interesting. Okay, I'm interested to hear. So, the podcast is on healing and awakening journeys. So, I would love to know then which one do you resonate with most? And when do you remember as maybe one of the first instances where you were like, I think I need to heal this, or I'm awakening to something different?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. This is definitely like a very like loaded question because I have so many ways that I could like answer this. I guess I would say, and I think I've talked about this like in one of like my social media posts or IG lives. I think probably like my father won't. And I'll share obviously like more what about that. Like I mentioned, my mom definitely raised me like on her own and it was like her choice. And my dad, tried to provide support like whenever he could. But I often also wondered like, but now that I look back, I kind of wondered like, when I was in high school or like even like in middle school, I always wondered like, how come he didn't like fight to be more in my relationship, like why didn't he fight to be like, no, like I'm here for you, like, I want to help you raise Carla, like, I always kind of like wonder that, but I also now through my conversations like with him, like, as a grown woman on her healing journey, I also recognize
Yeah.
that he also has a father wound that, a mother wound that he hasn't addressed. So, a disclaimer, he does have, he does have children from other like relationships, but I'm the only girl. I'm his only daughter. Me and my mom met when, they were like super young. So I was like again, like I mentioned, like the first daughter. So I think for him, it also felt kind of scary to kind of navigate, like, like how do I show up, for her, like being a girl dad, right? Like how do I do that when I
Mhm.
didn't have like a mom to kind of teach me this dynamic, right? So, again, so I
Mhm.
think like for me, just navigating the father wound also played like a significant role in how I like approach relationships, which I've also talked about like in other podcasts. So what I mean by that is that I also kind of felt like, well, since my dad didn't like show up for me, like, is it really worth it for me to even try to be in a relationship? Because like for my mindset, it's like, if my dad didn't show up for me, then how can I rely on other men to show up for me? Like maybe it's not even worth it. So I'm just going to
Mhm.
throw myself into like, school and activities. And that's exactly like what I did. Like I think like when I was in high school, like I didn't go out on any dates. Like all of my time was just busy doing part-time work and going to school while all of my friends kind of navigate the dating and all the other things. So I just threw myself like to school because I was like, I don't want to be disappointed by men, for lack of a better like term. Like I'm just gonna focus on me, do like my own thing. But when I did feel ready, like to navigate like the whole relationship dynamic, I did feel that my father wound like did show up because I just remember being like playing this dance of like, ooh, like I really like you, but I also don't want to give myself too much because I know you're gonna disappoint me like my dad, you know. So like finding like doing that dance is like, you know, oh, I'm
Yeah.
okay that he you know, maybe didn't ask me out like for like a second, like a third day. I'm totally okay, but the other side is like, wow, like another person that's gonna disappoint me or reject me, you know. So just
Like,
navigating that difficult wound. So I would say the father one is just something that, I mean, I'm still like trying to navigate, but that is one that has significantly shifted the way that I approach life and navigated different things. Hmm.
ooh, so many layers, right, to that,
Yeah.
um, to that
Yeah.
experience. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into it, and that's actually not something that I think I've delved into in a podcast episode, the father wound. So
Hmm.
I have a couple of questions, if it's okay
Sure,
with
sure.
you,
Yeah.
to set the scene. So
Yes,
number
yes.
one, my question is, did your parents meet here or back in El Salvador?
They met here in LA, and I'm trying to remember how they met. I feel like they met through one of my aunts, which is one of like my mom's cousin. I feel like they met through one of my aunts. So yeah, they met out here. Hmm.
Okay, out here. And then he stayed here, I'm assuming, like within, let's say, Southern California as you were
Hmm.
growing up?
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Hmm.
So he
Yeah,
was
he
like
did.
within reach, but not necessarily completely present,
Mhm.
it sounds like.
Exactly, exactly. Hmm.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you were to describe, I know the father wound can be like it's a big subject, kind of like a mother wound, but if those that are listening aren't really familiar with what is a father wound, how would you describe that?
um, Having a mix of ambivalence and anxiety when approaching like relationships with friends. Kind of like how I mentioned earlier, like doing that dance. It's like you really want, you know, to build a bond like with you know, with your partner, but at the same time you also don't want to give too much because you know it's going to lead to disappointment, leading to the disappointment
Mhm.
that you had, you know, like with your father growing up. And I also understand that there are definitely fatherhood can show up also in a two-parent household, right? And what I mean by that is that I've also worked with clients where they were raised in a two-parent household, but their dad was just busy, you know, being the breadwinner or just doing other things. So they weren't maybe like emotionally present. They were physically present, but not emotionally present. So the fatherhood can show up like in that way.
Mm,
Or the fatherhood can also be knowing that you have a, you know, a male figure like in your life, and like again, like he's there, but you also knowing that you can't really count on them because maybe he doesn't prioritize like your needs. Because I've also heard that too, in some other clients that I work with, where like, you know, they reflect on their relationship with their dad. Where like, hey dad, like I want you to go to like my soccer game, or hey dad, like I want you to go to my graduation, and for whatever reason they don't show up. So that also like leads to like disappointment. So it's kind of like, okay, well, knowing that I can't rely on my dad or maybe another father figure to show up for me in important events, then, you know, what does that mean for me? Am I not good enough, or should I be a better daughter? Yeah, so those are just some examples of how I interpret the father wound. Hmm.
got it. Okay. So maybe at the core or where it starts is in childhood, right? So, like, whether it's an abandonment of emotionally, physically, psychologically, maybe. So, like, either they're not physically present, but
Hmm.
and or emotionally, or maybe they're physically present but not emotionally. So there can be a number of ways that that can be created, right? In
Hmm.
childhood.
Yep,
Mm.
definitely. Hmm.
And then in adulthood, it starts to peek its head in different ways. So you've mentioned a couple a couple of ways, which is so interesting. For example, how you mentioned, like, let's just say even before or even when you were conceived, right? There was already a predisposition, let's say, on your mom's end of like, this isn't going to last, so I'm prepared to take care of my child on my own. So already,
Hmm.
even like maybe even your father wasn't pulling away, but your mom was already pushing him in some sense.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Mm,
And
okay.
I remember this, again, this is all tying to the father wound. I just remember one specific story that my mom has told me numerous times, but I think it's because it's still painful to her. She just remembers like asking my dad, like to get her this is when she was pregnant with me, that to go get her like a burger from one of her favorite like restaurants. I forgot the name. I don't think it's still in business. We're talking about the 80s. Like I'm pretty old, guys. So, so it's probably a restaurant that's not in the business. So anyway, so she asked him, and I think, I don't know if my dad was just really tired, like from work or just having like an off day, but he just made up like some excuse about how like he heard that the burgers from that place are like really bad or that they cause food poisoning, and so that he's not going to get her a burger from there. So my mom tells me that she just remembers being like so upset and just kind of like affirming her belief of like, that just the men that
Mhm.
have been in her life continue to disappoint her. So why should she continue asking for things when they're just going to say no or reject her?
Oh, wow. Yeah. And it's so interesting how like we kind of based on the wounds that we have, what we see, we run it through that filter, right? So like for her, it was like collecting evidence of like why she can't rely on this person.
Yep. Yeah. And I
Mm,
know for some
okay.
people it can be like, well, this is, something small. It's not such a big deal. But again, we're talking about like my mom, like she's never gone to therapy and, she does have a significant following, but just like what you were saying, like this rejection or disappointment is just feeding into that like narrative, like, yep, like I'm not worthy of, of being cared for or, of being nurtured too. So yeah. Hmm.
Mhm. Wow. And also, I think like maybe even in her asking, it was her attempt at being nurtured. I think maybe like your father couldn't perceive how big this was for her, right? Like, this is me asking, and you're not actually giving me what I need. Mm,
Yeah,
wow.
exactly. Because I know that for her, it took a lot for her to just even ask. And I know she shared like other examples where he hasn't like, shown up for her. And again, this was all before I was born. So yeah, like you were saying, this kind of sets the tone with how I was raised, how the narrative that I grew up with. So yeah, I totally agree.
Okay. So, how did it start to peek its head in your life? Like, how did you start to maybe, whether you want to speak about it that way or maybe from the perspective of when you started to heal, whichever one you feel comfortable with?
So I will say, I think, in the back of my head, like when I was like in high school or like maybe like when I was like in undergrad, like I knew it was there, but I wasn't really, um, ready like to address it like per se. I would say like the pivotal point, like for me, like when I knew that it was like something that I had to work on or address is that, I remember, let's say, but it was my sophomore year of undergrad. I remember,
Okay.
this really like sweet guy. I think we were like in the same class. Yeah, I forgot which class because again, it was years ago. But I remember like he was super sweet guy, like nothing wrong with him. But I just remember like, him always taking the initiative, like to like be nice to me or like bring me little things like after class and me just feeling like, why is this guy like doing all this? Like, why can't he pick like, like another person or blah, blah. Anyhow, I remember during one time, like in between, like walking together, like, to like another class, and looking back now, I'm thinking like, wow, he's probably really mature for his age. Him
No.
telling me like, him telling me, is it okay like if I share like an observation with you about something that I've noticed about you? And I was like, yeah, like go for it. And he was like,
Wow.
I know that you're probably not interested in dating me or in dating in general, but I do want you to know that you are worthy of a loving relationship, whether it's like with me or like another person. But I want you to know that, like, I don't know why I feel like I have to tell you that, but you are worthy of that. And I
Wow.
just, and that just kind of took me aback, like, why is this guy like saying that? I just remember just being stunned that he mentioned that. And I was just
Yeah.
kind of like, I remember my face turning red because I was just like, not really embarrassed, but I was just shocked by him just saying that. And I was just like, oh, okay, thanks. I just remember just walking off like so fast, like to my next class. But I remember just sitting with that information like for like a long time, and then that helped me reflect like, oh my god, like I think I really need to work on this. So during undergrad, like I did see someone to kind of like start like addressing it, and I felt like it definitely did help. But I think it also showed up again once I entered like my first like long-term relationship where we were having like a disconnect as far as like navigating like communication and all that. And I just remember like every time like we had like a disagreement or whenever I would ask my partner like for something and him just saying that he couldn't do it or like he was too busy, it just kind of took me back to like, oh my gosh, here's like another guy who's, who's
Wow.
rejecting me or who's just reminding me that I'm not, that I shouldn't be asking for too much. So I remember that also kind of setting the tone for me with how I approached my other relationship. Well, except like for my current, because I think I was in a better like healing state. But I just remember just feeling like scared to, take up space or like asking for too much because I would feel that that would be like such a burden like on my partners. But yeah,
Mhm.
so this incident in sophomore, I think it's my sophomore year of like undergrad is what really kind of set the tone for like, okay, I think I need to really like address this. I really need to talk to someone about this. Yeah.
Wow. That is so interesting how someone in college kind of like give for one asking, "Hey, can I share an observation?"
Yeah. Which I appreciate, right? Like
Yeah.
that's super kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And then this incident with your longer term relationship, so interesting because I think sometimes like we were mentioning, you could shy away from asking for too much because you don't want to be disappointed, right? So
Yes.
like that's how interesting it is. It's like instead of seeing it as like, oh, this guy disappointed my mom and so but that was their relationship, you're like, I don't want to get hurt that way. So maybe I'm an easygoing girl that doesn't need much. And this is my personality when it really isn't, right? But you're kind of protecting yourself. And so I think that lends way to talk about like why sometimes people continue to attract the same kind of guy, let's say. Wouldn't it be
Mm-hmm.
because you present yourself as low maintenance? I don't need much from you. So a guy that's like, cool, perfect. That's exactly the type of person that I need in my life. Right. And so like when
Mm-hmm.
people wonder like, how do I attract the same type of guy like that? Right. Because the way you present yourself and the needs or lack of needs that you kind of show that you don't need much or, oh, I'm an easygoing girl. Do you feel like you embodied that or no, like you were like, no, I started to know my worth at in college?
Yeah. Oh no. Like I was definitely like the person that was like, I'm easygoing, like I'm okay. Like I try to like brush it off,
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm okay if they don't text me back. I'm okay if he doesn't want to go to this event with me or he doesn't want to like hang out with me. I'm like, I'm totally okay. Like I'm chill. But deep down, like I knew that was hurting me. Like I knew that was like, oh man,
Mhm.
like this kind of sucks. But I would just kind of like try to shame out or just kind of like brush it off. But I would say, I think, like the most, significant like relationship that helped me go back into working like on myself was probably my last relationship before the current one that I'm in. Only because I
Okay.
feel that, at least at the time, I felt that the breakup on his end came out of nowhere. But I think looking back, I feel like because I was so triggered and activated in the relationship, I think there were definitely some things that I did that kind of self-sabotaged like myself and not showing up in the way that I
Mhm.
wanted to in the relationship. Not to say that, what I did, was okay or like warranted, but I definitely felt that I did a lot of things. I self sabotaged because I knew that like I really cared about this person, but at the same time, if I continued opening my heart more, that would create a pathway for me to get her. So let me do something to like not allow him too deep in, right? So I
Yeah.
think I do remember that breakup being like as unexpected as it was, like it was definitely like super painful, but it helped me definitely be a better a person now and a better partner to my current relationship because he did share with me like,
Mhm.
hey, like these are like I know I should have talked to you about this like way sooner, but I didn't want to let you know. He kind of gave me a list of reasons to why we're no longer like aligned with which I mean, looking back now, like, okay, like it does make sense that, obviously I'm going to take responsibility for the things like that it is self-sabotage the relationship, but also, he also acknowledged that he will also was in working through like his own stuff too, because a lot of personal stuff came up
Mhm.
for him during our relationship, which definitely impacted our relationship. So I think with him just letting me know, like, hey, like regardless of that this not working out. I think he also was another person that said, like, I do want you to find someone that loves you for you and accepts you like for who you are. I'm just not that person. But I
Okay.
want to let you know. So he was also like another person that just kind of reaffirmed the belief that, not just me, but I think anyone's deserving of a loving and healthy relationship. So, with that
Mm.
breakup, I definitely took a dating hiatus to just kind of like work on myself and heal myself. But I would
Yeah.
definitely say, as painful as that breakup was, it definitely helped me, like I said, be a better partner in my current relationship, which, I've been with my partner. Well, in May, it'll be 7 years, which has been my longest relationship and the last one. So, yeah. Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah.
I see. I like that you mentioned self-sabotage.
Mhm.
Not I mean, I
Mhm.
know it's not something easy, right? But I think, like,
Mhm.
in thinking about how tricky it is sometimes to navigate, like, even when you're aware, "Oh, I have a father wound," it must be so tricky because, like, when you're leaning into a relationship, there sometimes you allow yourself to lean in further into the wrong relationship, right? So maybe, like,
Mhm.
you're aware, okay, I have this father wound, which makes me protective and shielded. So maybe in this one, I'll open up and then you get hurt. And so then you're like back to shielded mode, right?
Yeah,
Like,
the shield is on.
yeah, like, not getting hurt again.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, like, you have to balance that out. So, so interesting. Do you feel like at this point, then you gain support, whether it's through therapy or books, like kind of what helped you get back up, Cause I think like, and then enter a more healthy relationship.
Yeah, I definitely feel well like so many things like obviously like therapy, like the support of like my friends, and I think also something about being in I think also being with the a person that aligns with your soul is also a key
Mm.
component like to your healing. So one thing that stands out to me about like how I knew that my partner was going to be someone that I saw like a long-term commitment with is that, because I was still like in the early stages of dating. We met on dating app, by the way. So dating apps
Okay.
still work, guys.
Ooh.
So don't give up. um, so I remember in the early like communication, like talking, I think this was after like our first date or second date. I don't remember. I just remember being in the state of like, wow, like I really like him. I think he's a great person, but also like my former anxious attachments are coming in like, but like maybe like I shouldn't like express too much interest because that could scare him off, or like maybe I shouldn't freak out so much just because he hasn't texted me back. But anyway, so there was this one
Mm.
instance, I think it was after like again, I think it's like a second date or third date where I just remember like not hearing back. Like I had texted him something like in the morning. I forgot what I said, but I remember like not hearing back from him. This was all like within an hour. Like I started getting anxious, like, oh my God, he found someone else. Like he probably is gonna
Wow.
tell me like he doesn't want to see me anymore. So like all these thoughts started spiraling, and I just remember like waiting for like a few hours and then sending him this follow-up text kind of saying like, hey, I just want to let you know that if you change your mind about seeing me, I forgot what I said. If you change your mind about seeing me, totally okay. I respect your decision. Just let me know. And then right away he called me. He was like, okay.
You were
Let's
already
start.
breaking up.
Yeah.
I hope you have I hope you
I
have a
hope you
good
have a
life.
wonderful life. I wish you all the best.
Yeah.
I just remember him calling. He's like, "Okay, Carla, let's like what's going on? Like what's happening? And then I just remember like
Yeah.
talking to him, like, I'm just feeling like anxious, because I didn't hear from him. He's like, "Okay, I hear you, but I had a really busy day at work. Doesn't mean that I wasn't gonna text you back. Like I wasn't text you back, but just." remember that just because I don't text you back like right away, it doesn't mean that I don't still like you or care about you. But anyway,
Hmm.
so I think like just like knowing that he was a person that could give me the reassurance that I needed and kind of just brought me back down like to earth. I knew this was someone that was definitely, I was definitely meant for like a long-term relationship. And then that's not to say that we didn't have other like little hiccups like around the relationship, but this just go back to what I said earlier about how just being with someone who truly aligns with your soul and is supportive of your healing journey is really pivotal in me being a better, not only partner, a friend, daughter, a therapist. So I would say like my current relationship has helped me healed also in so many ways, you know, because I mean, if
Mhm.
I could look back at myself in the early stages of dating, I would tell her to take some deep breaths, chill out, and it's all gonna be okay.
Yeah. Aw.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you got a good example of that because right now it's making me think of how this is also a way where people get caught up with love bombing, like those narcissists
Yes.
that love bomb you,
Hmm.
right? So, for
Hmm.
example, like you're someone or you were someone in that stage that potentially was anxious and needed that reassurance, and so maybe a narcissist can come in and love bomb you, right? Give you that
Hmm.
reassurance, give you that presence, and you're like, ooh, like the juicy stuff. This is what I've
Yeah.
always been wanting. and
Uh-huh.
then
Yeah. Give it to me. Give it to me. Yeah. Yeah.
and then they take it away and then you're stuck in the loop of like maybe let's say transported back to childhood where it's like I'm not enough, I need to give more,
Hmm.
it's me, right? Like because they gave me some love, so then that means that they are capable of that, so maybe I have to prove myself more, maybe I have to be more available, maybe I have to
Hmm.
ask for less. So then it puts you right back into trauma mode, right? Like if you attach or relate with the wrong person potentially.
Hmm.
Is there ways
Yeah.
as a maybe as a therapist or as someone who helps people through this, are there ways to detect the difference between someone like your current partner who was going to hold the space and was there for the long term versus someone who maybe is just doing it temporarily? Or is that really
Uh,
hard to like weave through, you know?
I mean, I feel like it can be a little hard, like to weed through. So one thing that my partner, I think, did teach me, like in the early, stages of relationship, is that like he's actually a person that doesn't like to text, which is really rare to find, right? Like nowadays, he's more of a phone call person. So I think that's something
Mm,
that we established like early on. Hey, just so you know, I'm a phone call person, so if I don't, like text you or text you back right away, it's because I'm probably going to follow up with a phone call. So again, it's just providing me that reassurance, right? So
mhm,
I feel like in regards to when I think about like love bombing or someone like narcissistic, I would say like something that has stood out for me in my many dating experiences before like meeting like my partner is that someone who makes like future plans like right away. Oh, like next
mm.
week let's go to Italy, or like oh like I can't wait for you to meet my family in Thanksgiving, and it's only January. You know. But what I mean by that, like, I think that, like, there are definitely some people who are obviously, like, maybe, like, super excited about getting to know you or wanting to meet you, like, see where the long-term perspective can hold. But I feel that with love bombing, it's just maybe, like, putting on too much too soon and you haven't really gotten, like, to know
Mm,
the person, like, really well. Like something that I think has stood out for me before when I was doing the online dating thing is that someone who was like promising all these things and we hadn't even met yet. We hadn't even gone to the first
mm,
date yet. Or like right after the first date, yeah, just saying like all these things like, oh my gosh, like, like I can't wait to do this with you, I can't do that, and like all these things, which is great. Like some of it could be, like genuine, but I think also at the same time we have to look at the follow through of like the plans, right? And a lot, like 90%
yeah.
of the time, they weren't really following. They were just saying this to get me like, hyped up and excited and like hopeful. Yeah, so I would say that that's like one example. I think just making sure that a person's words and actions align is like super important, especially in the early stages of dating. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I love
Yeah.
that. Okay. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
there's a lot of words and a little bit of action, right? And
Yes.
so
Hmm.
yeah, that can be enough just to bait you in and then like take it all away. So
Hmm.
beware, you guys,
Yes.
especially if you feel like yeah, because I think like I resonate with the father wound, which was a surprise to me because my father was physically present and he was actually kind of like my mother figure since he was
Mm.
more at home.
Hmm.
And so it was a surprise to me in my healing journey to find out like there can be emotional abandonment, right? So, like, just because
Yeah.
physically they're there doesn't mean you're getting the emotional, maybe support that a child needs. So it's good for like me too, as I'm learning, I'm like, ooh, that's interesting to keep in mind. Like, yeah, it could be easy for someone to like make you attracted to them and make you feel like, oh, this guy's got my back and is gonna hold me and be there for me, and then easily be like tricked into something that you don't want for the future. And then I was going to ask you now, as an adult that's healing and, is now in a healthy relationship, how has that shifted your relationship with your father?
Ooh, I love this question. Okay, I haven't been asked this yet. So yeah,
Ooh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. I would say it's definitely helped my father relationship, like actually. You know what's interesting is that, and again, I don't know if it's because I'm like the only daughter, but he's still, or maybe it's just because he's a Latino dad, he's still super like protective of me. Like, 'cause I remember like when I told him about like my current boyfriend, he just asked me like 1,000 questions like about him, and I had to reassure him like, Dad, like this is a really good guy. Like, you don't have to worry. And I'm an adult now, so you have to trust like my decision making, my process. But I think it also just came from a place of just making sure that, that this is going to be a good person for me, because I think in one of our conversations that we had later on, is that he recognized that he could have done a better job of showing up, um, for me, like as a dad, which I totally like appreciated. And then he says, and I remember just in that conversation, him telling me that, that he does want like what's best for me, because he knows that I'm deserving of a healthy relationship and a healthy love.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I definitely feel like it has helped us, kind of bring us like a little closer together, not as close as like me and my mom, but it's definitely helped me like mend like some of like that father wound that I had with him. And he gets along like with my boyfriend. Like they're not like besties, but I mean they do get along. They're both like, he's super respectful like towards him and my partner's family. So it has actually like definitely helped. And it has also helped me, see the light as far as like how my dad, did the best what he could with what he could. But again, he had the mother wound, and, he kind of had to figure stuff out all on his own as a young kid. So I can only imagine, what it's like, how those wounds are showing up for him as a father too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe
Hmm.
this one is a little bit of a harder question, but did it in any way cause some sort of grieving of like what it could have been like? Because I think that when you then get an example of like a good male figure in your life, whether it's a relationship or a father-in-law or something like that, I imagine then you can start comparing, right? Like, wow, I could have had this in some way. So did it trigger like grief in that process?
Yeah, actually, looking back, like I just remember, which is kind of like silly for me to say, but it's also like true. I just remember just feeling like I was kind of like the kid at school that was kind of different, for lack of a better term, because most of like my classmates came from a two-parent household. But again,
Mm,
it just goes back to like, like just because your parents are there physically doesn't mean that they're emotionally present, right? I just remember
mm,
just, like when we would talk about like our families, I would usually be the only one who would say, it's just me and my mom. It's just me and my
mm,
mom. Like, what about your dad? And it's like, how do you explain that like as a kid? Because I think even as a kid, like I didn't really know like what to say. Like I would just say like, I don't know. or like he's there but not there, yeah. So I
Mhm.
just remember there were definitely periods where like I wish I came from a two parent household, or like I wish I had like my dad around to go to the father dollar dances that they had like in school, or to do other things. But I again, also, I do want to say that again, going back to like my father, I think he did the best that he could. He did show up for me like with every graduation, even the elementary ones.
Mm.
So I do
Okay.
commend him for being there for those big moments, even when he couldn't be there for me otherwise. So yeah, there is definitely like some grief there. And in regards like to my father, like he's like, oh, he's amazing. Like he's just like the
Mm.
sweetest guy, and I'm like, oh, he, like, and we have a really good relationship. So like, even though like I didn't have the relationship that I wanted to, with my dad, I have other male figures who are kind of like filling that void. Like my uncles are super great. I also consider them like father figures. So yeah, so I do
Wow.
have a lot of healthy male role models in my life, and I'm thankful for that.
Hmm. Oh, that's beautiful to hear. But yeah, thank you for sharing. It's so beautiful too to hear that sometimes father-in-laws play that role, or can fill some of the gaps, let's say, that are left there for us as individuals.
Hmm.
Yeah. I imagine mother-in-laws do that too, by the way. But I mean, we're talking about the father wound.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, my
um,
mother-in-law's also great, as long, and also like my sister-in-laws, and then because I'm an only child, so like my partner comes
yeah.
from a big family, so I love that. I love that, and it's because that's something that I've always like dreamed about, like like being part of a family that has a big, like someone that has a lot of siblings and has a lot of relatives, and that he's exactly that. So I'm grateful that our paths crossed. So.
Hmm. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that story. And I do think in your work you do you do specialize in relationships, right? Is that correct? Or because I've picked up on that
Yes.
you talk about relationships. Okay.
Yeah. So I talk
Yeah.
about like dating. I do couples therapy, and obviously like I see clients like for individual therapy, and so for the ones that I do individual work, like we do talk about like, yeah, dating, relationships and all that. But couples work is something that I'm like, I would say that even when I was like super single, like just the concept of relationships just really like fascinated me. And I don't know if it was just my way of just trying to find like, some sort of like attachment to like maybe not having the childhood that since I didn't grow up in a two parent household, that me just finding some way of like recognizing that, maybe one day I can create this for myself. Obviously, like not yet, but I've just always been super fascinated about relationships. I just remember even like in middle school, like reading like all these like books about like relationships, and obviously like in high school, and again like saying like I was super single and like not like having anyone on my radar, but just the concept of relationships, I always felt like can have some healing powers, because like I said, like if you
Mm,
have someone that aligns with your soul or your healing journey, it can create like so much, more love for you like in your life. So yeah,
I
I'm super
see.
passionate about
Yeah.
relationships.
Ah, so beautiful. Okay, so it's kind of part of your story led you to what you do now then. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. Do you want to talk maybe just a little bit about what you do, plug your socials? Because we're nearing the end of this part one, where we get to know you. And so I definitely want people to know like where they can follow you and kind of the work that you do.
Sure, sure. So I'm only on Instagram, so I'm under Novos Caminos Therapy, and on my page there's a link where I have a bunch of resources, because I like giving out resources to the community. But my website is linked on there, and then I actually just recently updated my website where I'm now offering premarital counseling at a reduced rate, like for couples. Another topic that I've been wanting to like launch, but the other day I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna just put it in there. But yeah, I like doing premarital counseling like for couples, just because again it goes back to me like wanting to help like our community create those like healthy relationships, and then breaking those generational trauma patterns. So yes. That's all on
Okay.
my under Nuevos Caminos Therapy on Instagram.
Okay, beautiful. I'll make sure to link your social and your website in the description. And okay, so now I'm going to ask you a couple of resource questions. So for whoever's listening and is like, oh, I resonate with what she's talking about, I like to ask the guests sometimes, like, what maybe books, movies, music, etc. So let's start with your favorite healing or mindful tool that has been helpful for you in this healing journey.
I would say taking deep breaths,
Mm,
doing a lot of breath work is helpful because not just only like when you're like stressed or overwhelmed, but I also find myself doing it like, if I'm feeling overwhelmed like by a conversation that I'm having, not just like with my partner or anyone else, but I think breath work is so important because something that I like teaching like my couples is that sometimes when you're activated, your immediate response could be like, let me just say what I want to say because I want to like hurt them like they hurt me. But sometimes
yeah.
that's not the best thing to do, right? Because then you're going to activate the other person and boom, you create a volcano, right? So something that I
Yeah.
like to teach couples and also my individual clients is to take like 15 or 10 seconds to just gather your thoughts, take some deep breaths before you respond, because that can help recenter yourself and help you gather your thoughts in a more healthier way before you say something like hurtful to like the other person. So I do that like on a regular basis too, like if I'm feeling stressed or like overwhelmed or just something that happened out like in public, just like I think taking deep breath is like so undervalued, to be honest with you. So I like doing that.
Mm,
Hmm.
yeah. Oof, I love that. Breath
Uh-huh.
as a tool is so, so important. What about a habit that you do for yourself every single day?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love to run. I'm a runner, so I've run a couple of marathons and half marathons. But I really love running, and I also love doing strength training. Yes, those are the things that I do on a regular basis, at least like 5 days a week. And if on my off days, I make sure to get in my steps. So I love moving
Okay.
my body. Yeah.
What about a favorite quote or advice that you find yourself referring back to?
Okay, so the first quote that comes to mind, and I could be totally butchering the quote, so I apologize, Maya Angelou. But it's her quote that says, when people show you who they are, or I think it's something along those lines. I'll probably like have to look it up, but I think it's something about like when people show you who they are the first time, believe them. I think that is so true. How you show up, for others or for yourself on a regular basis tells you like so much. And what I mean by that is I'm gonna tie it back to relationships because this is like my passion. What I
Yeah.
often see in the couples that I work with is like some of like the current issues that they're facing right now are things that they saw in the beginning, but they kind of just put to the side
Mhm.
because, oh, it's not a big deal, or like I can change them, or like I'm just overreacting. But paying attention early on how people show up, I feel is so important and tells you much more than you think.
Wow, that's so powerful. Like the little things that you ignore in the beginning are the ones that turn bigger. Eeh, okay.
Hmm.
Something to pay attention to, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that can be hard too, like if you tend to overthink, right? So that's going to be the
Yes.
hard part. Like maybe building a
Hmm.
stronger relationship. I mean, that's my thing, the intuition part, like building a relationship
Hmm.
with
Your
your intuition.
intuition. Yes.
Yeah, so that
Hmm.
you can discern like, is it overthinking? Is it really a gut feeling? Yeah. Oof. Okay. Super important. All right. A feel good or powerful book or movie that you like to, like maybe it inspired you or it just makes you feel good.
I would say I'm a huge fan of like rom-com movies. It's hard for me
Oh,
to just pick just one, but I like anything by Julia Roberts, Reese Witherspoon. Oh my gosh, like so many. I just like so many rom coms. Like again, because it ties back to romance and relationships, so I'm all for it. So any rom com I feel like resonates with you. I'm trying to think of like of one at the top of my head. Oh, I don't know if people still read these books, but there was this author. His name is Nicholas Sparks. Like well, I think so. Everyone's watched The Notebook, right? Like I think everyone's. But
Oh
anyway,
yeah.
The Notebook is actually not my favorite movie of his. Like my favorite movie of him is actually it's Dear John, and then there's this one movie with Zac Efron. I forgot the The Lucky One. I think it's called The Lucky One. Yes. So those are
Okay.
the ones that I can think of at the top of my head. Like any romance, rom coms are all my jam. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. All right, all right. And then last resource question is a influencer like or social media person that you follow that leaves you positively inspired.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard to pick just one. Because I mean, I could say you, obviously, you know. I could say you. There's like so many. Okay, so I'll just name like the ones that come at the top of my head. Jacqueline Garcia, she's under Therapy Lux.
Mhm.
Yeah, Therapy Lux is her Instagram. One other couples therapist that we've been connecting like recently just because we both love the work. Her name is Chantal Hernandez. She's under I think Chantal LMFT on Instagram.
Okay.
Trying to, there's just like so many. I'm trying to think of like other ones. But those are the two that I can think of right now at the top of my head. But there's a lot. If you
Okay.
go on my page and see the collaborations that I've done, those are some of the people that you should follow. Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. That's one of the things I love that you do is you collaborate a lot with people. So that's super cool.
Yes.
Ooh, okay. All right. So the last set of questions are speed round. Okay.
Okay.
Salsa verde o roja?
Ooh, you may not like my answer or the audience may not like my answer, but I can't do spicy food, any
Okay.
kind.
Get because I typically say what's your taco order, so I'm gonna say what's your pupusa order.
Okay. So since I'm pescatarian, I just do, well, actually, I could do
Mm.
a couple. I could do, beans and cheese or, I also like doing like the one like with squash and cheese. I like doing that one. Oh, and then
Um,
also, I'm a non-traditional Salvadorian. I don't like curtido. So I just eat it by itself. I know.
do you like conchas, like pan dulce?
Yes, yes. I love conchas.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
concha de vainilla o chocolate,
Oh, I would say vainilla. Vainilla, yeah.
horchata o jamaica,
Oh, hard one. I would probably say horchata. Yeah.
horchata. Okay. And I think that's it for the fun questions. But thank you so much. Thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the work that you do. I know I already told you off camera, but I definitely like see you, like I said, I see you collaborating and just using your voice. And I love seeing other Latinas do that. So thank you for, yeah, for the work that you do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Priscilla, for having me. I had so much fun. It was such a beautiful conversation. And, I'd love to come back if you'll have me. But yeah, thank you so much for holding space for me.
Awesome. Yay. So before we close it out, though, I do want to give you a moment. I always ask the guest if you were to, like, you have a group of first gens listening to you. So any message that you'd like to share with them as we close out this episode.
You are deserving of a healthy, loving relationship and a person who is, the one that's supposed to align with you will be there for you no matter what. So like, don't give up. Your person like is out there.
Aw. And yes, I would love to have you back for a part two. We'll have to plan like what it'll be about. I have a feeling it'll be relationship related. But
Yeah.
yes, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. And for those of you guys listening, thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Please make sure that you share it with your amigas, amigos, amigues. And remember, first gen, that I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself.